Kia ora, hello from Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is Anyway, and I'm your host, Natalie McMurray. I'm here to talk television, reality television, pop culture, and the like. I'd like to start by saying that I've had yet another piece of feedback from my husband about episode 2. He has informed me that dodo birds are in fact not Australian, or were in fact not Australian. No, they were in fact from Mauritius. So apologies to dodo birds of times past. Apologies to Australia and Mauritius. And apologies to anybody who has been misinformed and has been going around telling their friends that dodo birds were from Australia to try and make themselves seem smarter than what they actually are. Sorry. I don't know why I thought they were from Australia. So I asked Google, why do I think dodo birds were from Australia? And Google told me that I'm probably lumping them in with other big dumb flightless birds from Australia, like the emu or the cassowary, both of which scare the absolute shit out of me. So I should probably watch it calling them dumb. I was chased around a field by an emu when I was a child, which scarred me for life. And cassowaries are probably the closest animal I've seen to looking like a dinosaur. I definitely wouldn't want to come across either of them in the wild. I don't even want to come across them at the zoo. Google also told me that Colossal Biosciences is actively attempting to use CRISPR gene editing technology to bring the dodo back, aiming to restore it to its natural habitat, which sounds very Jurassic Park. And why not? It worked out so well for John Hammond and his team of genetic scientists. Big thumbs up. Anyway, before getting into House of Villains, I wanted to mention that I watched the first episode of Ladies of London, The New Reign. I haven't seen the original, but I did love Carolyn Stanbury on Dubai Housewives, so I may need to check out the original. But on the new one, they have Mark Francis. And Mark Francis is from Made in Chelsea. He was hilarious on Made in Chelsea. He was so bitchy, and him and Victoria basically spent the whole time just reading the rest of the cast, which was great. They were a great duo. He did exhibit some very sociopathic behavior on Made in Chelsea. I specifically remember a scene with him and Victoria where she was upset and crying about something, which was unusual to see because she was normally just as cold and icy in stomach as Mark. And for the life of him, Mark Francis could not understand why she was crying and basically just told her to stop being silly. He might be an android. He does kind of give Data from Star Trek. But I guess it is somewhat progressive to have a male on one of these shows. It really shouldn't be progressive this day and age. I'd like to see a guy or two on the Housewives franchise. I mean, at this point, most of them aren't quote unquote housewives anyway. It's more of a status. So yeah, why not get some men on there? The Ladies of London make me wonder if all it takes to be rich is delusion. One of them has a safari park on her estate. She has all sorts of animals, including rhinos and giraffes, a gorilla. One of them has taxidermy birds/animals. And one of them has a pet magpie called Haggerty. Speaking of Australian birds of terror, she has to give her guests goggles so that the magpie doesn't pick their irises out. I'm going to say that one more time. She has to give her guests goggles so that the bird doesn't eat their eyeballs. What the actual fuck? She's also giving this psychotic bird gin martinis, which cannot be good for its health and is an absolute waste. Also, there are so many M names. Martha, Mark, Margot, Missy, Mika, Maggie May. It reminds me of the movie Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, where Elizabeth Olsen escapes a cult. It was a really good movie, but I actually can't remember what happens in the end. But nevertheless, it's good. Anyway, enough about the eccentric Ladies of London. Moving on to House of Villains Season 3, Episode 3. We're back in the knockoff USS Enterprise. The first person to be banished from the house is... Oh, Joel is having technical issues. He's started playing Slow Horses somehow. A show in which Gary Oldman is a spy and also a massive cunt to everyone. That's about all I know about that. In a vote of 5-3, the first villain to be banished is Jackie. Tyson says bye and hits the eject button. Then the contraption starts moving and Jackie looks like she's about to break her fucking neck. She's going to feel that pain tomorrow. Can't they get some neck support on that thing? It seems like a lawsuit waiting to happen. Christine says that Jackie is gone and then gets confused between a black swan and a phoenix. And this is turning out to be a very bird-heavy episode. Sorry to all the ornithobians in the audience. Anyway, the math isn't mathing for Ashley because 3 people voted for Christine. She wants to find out who the goddamn rat is so that she can be all off with their head. They're all congratulating Christine on staying, and upstairs, Kate Chastain wants a fucking vodka and Diet Coke. And this would be me on a reality show, or any show, or anywhere. You want me to talk to people without what now? Get that woman a drink. Tom, I'm looking at you. The rest of them are talking about their votes in the living room, and at this moment I'd just like to point out the Muppet-style puppets of them in the background. They're cute and all, but they look nothing like them. They're clearly not Jim Henson-level puppets. And if they're not from Jim Henson Productions, then isn't this a copyright issue? Although I doubt anyone from Jim Henson Productions is watching this garbage. They definitely have better things to do. Anywho, Johnny is telling us that Tom is giving him the ick. Same here, Johnny. Johnny doesn't trust Tom because he shook hands with Jackie. And Jackie is flying back to LA on her private jet laughing hysterically. I do think that perhaps we should stop using words like hysterically and hysterical. Either that or we should start applying it to men as well. Just a thought. Just a thought. Jackie made Tom look like a straight-up dummy, and we love that. They're all trying to figure out who the third person to vote for Christine was. And Johnny says, or it could have been me. I don't know. And this is some straight negging bullshit that this man has learned from Mystery. That idiot misogynist with the big fluffy hats from the pickup artist. Fuck that guy. You're giving men with big fluffy hats a bad name, which Jamiroquai does not appreciate. Joel comes over the loudspeaker and he says he's sending in some friends to help them dress for the next battle royale. Paul doesn't understand what's happening with the clothes, but he likes them because they're bizarre. Lord knows Tom Sandoval loves a costume. Ashley says that she's forced to work with the men because none of the women have been on a reality show competition, which in turn apparently makes them stupid. That's a stretch, Ashley. You mean to tell me that Flavor of Love wasn't a competition? Just because the prize isn't that great doesn't mean it's not a competition. And then we see an image of Tyson in his costume, sending me straight back to the nightmares I used to have of Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka as a child. Good Lord, that was a jump scare. Everyone is still trying to figure out who the third person that voted for Christine was. And Christine questions Tom. Tom says it wasn't him. And then we see Drita saying maybe it was Kate because she rooms with New York. And then Christine asks Paul. Paul says no. But Paul is bored. He's sick of being a pawn and he doesn't like when things are going smoothly. Apparently dressing like a flamboyant pirate is not entertaining enough for him. Plus, he's not into Tom Sandoval and he wants to fuck him just like Jackie did. He's taking the doubt that people already have and exacerbating it. So we see Paul voting for Christine. Good producing, Paul. Tom says that he actually thinks it was Paul, but he has yet to convince anybody else. Time for the villains to head to the backyard for the next Battle Royale challenge. They walk out to a tea party, and Joel is dressed like an astronaut, which never gets explained. I don't know. Joel brings out Victoria from season 2 to help with the challenge. Plain Jane is gagged and tells us that she was running around the house annoying the shit out of everybody. Sounds like a good reality show contestant to me. The aim of the challenge is basically for the villains to guess who is trying to poison them. I'd go into more detail, but why overcomplicate things? Johnny says to Tom to look at the way the dresses lay and if they change. Now, I know none of us think that Johnny is the smartest man in the room, but seriously, that is the dumbest strategy for this game. Not only are the men not wearing dresses, but what if one of the dress wearers, I don't know, moves or crosses their legs or adjusts their body? How the hell is that going to work, Johnny? Don't answer that. Johnny is dressed in Victorian garb and all of a sudden he thinks he's Sherlock Holmes or something. I know Sherlock Holmes is a fictional character, by the way, but I'm not smart enough to know a real-life detective from the 1800s. Then they start the game. Joel tells them to put on their blindfolds, and Tiffany asks, is this how Ray Charles be feeling? Which, I don't know what to say about that. Speaking of Tiffany New York Pollard, I watched her interview with Z-Way the other day, and I learned a few things. I learned that she's a fellow Capricorn. I learned that she's non-binary and goes by the pronouns him, her, she, and who, and they, and we will. And then Z-Way also adds in that bitch. And she's queer. She loves good pussy. Those are her words, not mine. I learned that she used to think that men had two dicks, being the dick and the balls. She thought the balls were another dick, which is understandable if you have a lack of sexual education. I learned that she thinks Darth Vader said, "May the Force be with you," and she thought that she was watching Star Trek when he said it. That's disappointing. I learned that she thinks she should be president, but also when she found out his pay grade, not so much. I learned that you only get one time around this bend, so you better let these bitches know. It was a great interview, very funny, so I think everybody should check it out. Honestly, just when I thought this bitch couldn't get any funnier, she gives us this, so God bless. Back to the challenge. Music plays and blindfolds on, and Tyson gives the poison to Drita. Paul and Plain Jane are having a dance party, blindfolds off, and Drita calls everyone scumbag rat motherfuckers, making me want to go back and watch the entirety of Mob Wives just to hear her say that 5,000 more times in that accent. Drita actually says that it would have been smart for Tyson to give it to her because he's right next door. Go with your gut, Drita. But she gives it to Johnny, which means Drita is out of the game. She carks it right then and there into Johnny's lap, and then goes to hell. Tiffany gives the poison to Paul. Paul is boo-hooing about losing Big Brother twice. That's on you, Paul. Stop talking about your incompetence. Paul thinks that it was Kate, and Kate tells us that her poker face is great. Her poker face is the same as her sad face, her happy face, and we have to assume her orgasm face. And that is all down to the glorious actual poison known as Botox. Paul eventually gives it to Tyson, saying that Tyson tried to poison him, which means Paul is dead too. Fuck! He goes to hell. Johnny gives the tea to Christine, and Christine guesses Kate. And Kate tells her to choke on it. She's dead and goes to hell. Tom gives the poison to Kate, but Kate thinks it was Tyson. She gone. Ashley gives it to Tiffany. Tiffany thinks that it was a man in her midst, and she accuses Tyson. And Tiffany gives us a pretty epic seizure-looking death. And on her way out, Johnny tells her to go to hell because he wrongly thinks that he's as funny as Joel McHale. Fuck you, Johnny. Plain Jane gives the poison to Tom, and this is where I question whether they can see under these blindfolds, because I know Tom Sandoval's instincts aren't this good. Because Scandival, you know? He immediately looks at Plain Jane, and Plain Jane's poker face is absolutely atrocious. Plain Jane could learn a thing or two from Kate Chastain. She looks guilty as fuck. She clutches her pearls and says she would never. Tom gives Plain Jane the poison, and she gives a pretty entertaining speech about riding his pathetic cop to his grave. She starts choking, rips off her wig, and starts twerking before dying. Then Plain Jane crawls to hell. Ashley gives the poison to Tom. Tom notices that Ashley is not making eye contact with him, thus showing her guilt. Perhaps he does have good instincts. Perhaps he's just using those instincts for evil. Tom gives the poison to Ashley, and she goes to hell. Finally, we see Tom giving the poison to Tyson, and Tyson says it was Tom, and Tom goes to hell. Tyson and Johnny have to decide who gets to win Supervillain. They decide Johnny. He says that him and Tyson are on the same page, but that page is turned, reminding us all that he does in fact know how to read. They gather back outside to congratulate Johnny. Tiffany is not impressed. Johnny selects Drita and Tom to go on the threesome date, and Drita is happy because she thinks Johnny is oh for awesome, much to my chagrin. Tiffany catches Johnny looking at her, and she's not happy. She wants to know what the fuck he's looking at. Her and Johnny get into a kerfuffle, reminding us that Tiffany's pronoun really is that bitch. Drita is excited by the drama. Johnny wants to tell Tiffany to calm down, like he's trying to gaslight the entire fucking room. I do have to agree with Johnny that picking a fight with the supervillain is not exactly the vibe. But I'm also excited by the drama. So what are you going to do? Victoria comes up to Tyson and Tom's room to tell us that she's Team Tom when it comes to the scandal of it all. Excuse me, miss. The exit is that fucking way. Okay. Way to be on the wrong side of history. She tells us that she felt sorry for him because nobody had Tom's side. No one had Tom's side because he was the one in the wrong. Apparently, she went through it with Bachelor Nation. I've not seen her season of Bachelor. What I do know is that she stole another contestant's crown or tiara, which sounds funny, but if you're going to act like a bitch, don't start getting mad when people come for you. Tom sympathizes with the shit that she went through on The Bachelor, but basically laughs in her face for siding with him. And that's what you get for being a dummy. Plain Jane is telling Drita that she doesn't feel the best that Johnny is supervillain. Drita doesn't understand why. And Plain Jane says that being a flamboyant gay boy, it's hard to connect with super macho butch straight men. Which makes total sense, but doesn't necessarily go down the way the editors would have liked when they cut to Johnny in his gay pirate outfit. Plain Jane tells us that she came to a point in her life where she could either hide the flamboyant part of herself or embrace it. And thank God for all of us she embraced it. Because baby, she's a firework. Which has sent me to dark thoughts of Katy Perry singing What a Wonderful World, while falling back down to earth with Gayle King and Lauren Sanchez. Plain Jane tells us that she will make a scene if she ends up on the hit list. Insert nefarious foreshadowing music here. Johnny says that he's a good one, he promises, and he's more of an anti-hero, which leads me to believe that Johnny doesn't know what an anti-hero is. He's saying it like he thinks he's Superman, but is coming off as Lex Luthor. You may think that your antics are for the good of the house, Johnny, but ultimately you're still a villain. None of these people in this house have done more scheming and side work than you have. Anyway, Kate wanted to see Love Island boy with the muscles go. She thinks Johnny is the evil, quiet type, which I wish we were seeing because this man seemingly has not stopped talking. Later that night, Kate goes to hand in her mic to production. Meanwhile, Tyson, Johnny, and Ashley are talking strategy in the kitchen. You know what some people call the kitchen? Some people call it the heart of the home because it's where a lot of activity and a lot of socializing and other goings on happen. So if you're trying to be discreet, Johnny, perhaps don't do it in one of the most central rooms in the house. Johnny sees Kate walk past the kitchen and accuses her of spying on them. I'm here to say that Kate does not give one fucking shit what those people were talking about. She cares about going to bed. She actually even wasn't really that close to the kitchen. And while we're on some dumbass shit that Johnny says, he says, the odds will always be in our favor. You're not Lucky Flickerman, Johnny, and this is not the Hunger Games. He then goes on to say that Kate seems to not give a fuck about anything, which is exactly right, and also completely contradicts what he was just saying about her being a spy. Anyway, they're all going to bed, and Ashley, Paul, and Johnny are in the bedroom talking about how Tom suspects Paul of being shady. Johnny says that he has no doubt in his heart that he can trust Paul, to which Paul sits there with a look on his face that says, "You are so easy to manipulate." Johnny thinks that Tom is a snake, and Paul wants him to put Tom up. The next morning, we see everyone waking up. Tyson says that he's going to take a shower and wants to know if Tom needs to take a dump in their shared bathroom before he does, because apparently he wants to bask in that aroma. And Tom looks at him in the disgusted way that I feel upon hearing this. We then see Christine, Ashley, and Tyson. Tyson is wearing his trash bag jacket. We see them sending Muppet Puppet Jackie off on her private jet, aka one of those toy polystyrene gliders that always broke when you tried to fly them. Maybe that was just a Wellington thing? For context, Wellington is the windiest city in the world. Big bummer for any air-based toys. Paul and Plain Jane are saying good morning to each other, and Paul is showing all of his trinkets and accessories to Plain Jane, and she's going to be there for a while. Plain Jane tells us that Paul is an ally and a friend. She says Paul is like my weird alternative Armenian uncle, and she's here for it. Paul wants to know why she has burger slippers, and Plain Jane says that she has a song called Burger Finger. It's a song about a finger that smells like burger. And it gets pretty sexual from there. Check it out. Johnny is still making passive-aggressive jokes to Christine about her having a boyfriend. Christine says that Johnny wanted a showmance, but for her it's a no-mance. Johnny is looking desperate at this point, and Christine is hoping it's not going to lead to her demise. Kate wants to know if New York thinks she's the Lucy or the Ethel between them. I've never seen an episode of I Love Lucy, but I'm aware of it in a cultural setting. Tiffany says that she would be Fred. She says he was so healthy and round-bellied, and he was so funny. Google describes him as a notorious curmudgeon, a grump, a miser, and a loyal friend. Lovable, yet cranky, which I guess kind of sums up New York in a way. Kate thinks that she would be Ricardo, which Google says Ricardo had controlling behaviour, was known to gaslight and manipulate, and had harsh reactions to Lucy, including spanking her. It also says that fans defend him for just being a product of his time. The 1950s, ladies and gentlemen, not really that long ago when you think about it. We then get a parody of the two of them in an I Love Lucy scenario. And Tiffany is telling us that she eats sardines and mustard, which is way more jarring to me than the shit that I just read about these two male characters. You eat, huh? With what now? I love mustard as much as the next person, but two such intense flavors cannot go down well. Paul comes in to talk to Kate about people throwing around their names as the third person that voted for Christine. We then get a whole spiel from Kate about how Johnny got weird with her when she was talking about Jojo Siwa. About whether Jojo Siwa is broke because she was on Special Forces, and how she inexplicably carried Tom Sandoval across a desert apparently. Kate's words, not mine. While on the subject of Tom Sandoval, I just want to speak on the new Vanderpump Rules for a minute. I've been watching the new version and I'm honestly enjoying it. I find it enjoyable. But I guess there's a lot of people that are shit-talking it online. I've heard a lot of people complaining that these people will never be the old cast. And that's true, because the people on the new cast are seemingly more emotionally evolved than 98% of the old cast when they were on Vanderpump Rules. I think that probably has to do with the fact that they're Gen Z and the old cast were millennial. I say that being a millennial myself, so I mean no shade by that. I can only assume that it has to do with them growing up in an environment where communication about mental health was more prominent. When I was growing up, the only way I knew how to take care of my mental issues was to scream until I felt like I was going to have a brain aneurysm. Not that I knew what a brain aneurysm was growing up. Anyway, there are two cousins who do various activities with each other on their OnlyFans, and some would say these are borderline incest activities. I've not seen them, so I cannot confirm nor deny. They're pretty unapologetic in their pursuits to get rich and famous, and I say good for them. There's a guy who was shot by his friend a bunch of times when he was younger. He states that he's practicing ethical non-monogamy, and he's also sober. I believe that ethical non-monogamy is where you date and sleep with whoever you want, and you're open and honest about it with everybody involved. I'm not entirely sure if he's doing it correctly, but the term ethical non-monogamy was definitely not top of conversation when the old Vanderpump Rules was on. Not to my knowledge, anyway. There's an adorable red-headed gay man called Venus with hair down to his ass. He's celibate, and he has been for the past 8 years, because he's sick of shit-headed men treating him like crap, and he wants to find love. All of this to say that, of course, they're nothing like the old cast. They never would be, because humans evolve, and young people are different now. And thank fucking God for that. Anyway, getting back to the issue at hand. The crux of what Kate was trying to say about Jojo Siwa is that she's surprised to see her on a bunch of garbage reality shows. And she's sick of Johnny trying to mansplain to her that people just do it to make a quick buck. Kate thinks that Jojo Siwa should be above reality television, I guess, and I don't necessarily disagree, because she did seemingly have an empire of shit that she sold to tweens, which I would have thought made her pretty wealthy. But then again, she did make a name for herself on Dance Moms, so I'm kind of in two minds about it. We then see Tiffany explaining to Johnny why she flew off the handle with him, in the hopes that he doesn't put her up. Tyson is going for a swim, and Tom is still trying to convince everybody that he's musically inclined. Put the guitar down. Plain Jane comes to talk to Johnny and explains that it's harder for her to connect with straight men because growing up, she didn't always get along with guys like Johnny. She says that drag queens don't necessarily get opportunities like this very often, so she's really grateful to be here to showcase her talents. Plain Jane wants to stay, and she's genuinely expressing her thoughts and feelings about it. And we love to see that. Paul and Johnny and Ashley are upstairs discussing who to put up, and Paul suggests putting up Tom as a decoy. This excites Johnny to no end. Clearly, the thought didn't even cross his mind. The next morning, we see Plain Jane walking up the stairs in a peach maid's outfit and shoes that would break my damn ankles if I ever tried to wear them. She comes into Paul and Johnny's room to do some cleaning and some twerking. Plain Jane wants to please and tease and do right by Miss Johnny. Joel comes over the loudspeaker and announces that it's time for Johnny, Drita, and Tom to go on their date. Before they leave, Drita calls Tyson Tyler. Like I said, wholly unforgettable. They arrive at their date, and Drita is very underwhelmed to find out that they're flicking paint at each other. I actually think it looks like a fun day to do if you're on an actual date, but I can see why she's disappointed after being sequestered in the House of Villains for God knows how long. The company is called Shot of Art, and as a graphic designer, I have to say the logo is fucking terrible. Both times that I watched this episode, I saw the sign and thought to myself, Shotto fart? Either you need a different logo or somebody needs to do some fucking kerning on that sign. Please. Drita feels like she's being punished rather than rewarded because Drita hates a mess. They start throwing paint at each other, and it's reminding me of the scene in The Bride where she coughs black shit and it splatters all over her face. Pretty iconic. Truly great movie if you haven't gone and seen it. Anyway, Tom is giving us his best Alan Cumming impression, and it could have perhaps been convincing until he pretends to jizz out of the paint bottle, because men. They're throwing paint everywhere, and Tom decides to rip off yet another beloved man. He says, they're not mistakes, they're happy accidents. And Bob Ross is turning in his grave. Back at the house, they get a pizza delivery. They're dubious as to its contents and start sniffing at it like a pack of hyenas. They open the one on top, and it has a tiny purple hand, which Christine and Tyson both go to grab. From my eye, it looked like Christine had it and Tyson snatched it off her. But we all know how I feel about Tyson, so it could have played out differently. We find out that the tiny purple hand represents the power to be the supervillain's right-hand man, which means the person who gets it gets to help with making the decision for the hit list nominations. Tyson ultimately gives it to Paul, because Paul opened the pizza box lid. Christine doesn't really seem to put up much of a fight about this. She gives us a very Spider-Man-esque quote, something about how with great power comes great shenanigans. And somewhere, Sheena Shea's ears just perked up. To which I say, you probably want this power, Christine. Power is a good thing in a game, no? Tyson gives us some bullshit about not wanting the power, and that he wants to give it to Paul to let him know he trusts him. It wasn't yours to give, Tyson. Just like a privileged middle-aged white guy to assume you own everything. Paul is unsure whether this is a good or a bad thing for him to have, but he thinks that it may give him the opportunity to take a real shot at someone, which he doesn't. Spoiler alert. Back at Shotto Fart, we see Drita, Johnny, and Tom sitting down to eat. Tom is living in Delulu land, where he fucks with Johnny and Johnny fucks with him. Johnny does fuck with you, Tom, just not in the way you'd like. Johnny then presents the idea of Tom being a decoy. Tom gives Johnny his best puppy dog eyes and tells us that he feels completely stabbed in the back. Tom is pleading his case not to be put up, but Johnny and Drita are shutting that shit down. Johnny lies straight to Tom's face and says he's trying to create trust between them. Way to gaslight, Johnny. Drita, Johnny, and Tom are coming back from paint splattering, and Paul and Tyson explain to them the situation with the right-hand man. Paul says that him and Johnny have equal power in who to put on the hit list. Tom is freaking out about potentially being put up for nomination. He's telling Tyson that Johnny thinks it's some kind of Kaiser Soze role. alluding to the persona of Kaiser Soze pretending to be a small-time con artist with cerebral palsy, which leads me to believe that Tom Sandoval has either not seen The Usual Suspects or he did not understand the ending. Kaiser Soze is not the decoy. Kaiser Soze is the criminal mastermind. Ipso facto, if Tom were Kaiser Soze in this situation, he would be in control. Nice try, Tom. Johnny and Paul are chatting about who to put up, and because they both can't vote, they won't be able to save Tom if needed. So that plan is kiboshed. Tom joins their discussion and says that Plain Jane is a question mark for them right now, and why not put her up? Paul tells us that for him, Tom is not the decoy, he is the target. But he seemingly cannot get Johnny to agree. You have equal power, Paul. Step it up. Paul does say to Johnny that if they put up Plain Jane, that they're fucking their game up. And he says that there's no way he's doing that. Insert eye roll so big that my eyeballs get stuck in the back of my head here. Bing, bong, bing! Doll comes over the loudspeaker and says it's time to get ready for the hit list nominations. Plain Jane comes out in full Pussy Riot gear, which is fucking hilarious and I couldn't love it more. She's a little social bandit and she's ready to go to war for the cause of villainy. Or villainy, as I believe it's more commonly known. They go back to the spaceship. And every time I write spaceship in my notes, it comes out as spaceship, which is maybe more appropriate. Anyway, Johnny takes the supervillain seat and Paul stands beside him as the right-hand man. Joel reminds us that the people on the list have been put up there by both of them together equally. They say that they've come to a mutual decision. And the first person on the list is Tiffany. No surprises there given the scuffle with her and Johnny. She knew it, and she says she doesn't know why Aquaman and wannabe Captain Hook are upset with her. We could have worked this shit out, she says. Paul goes to address her as Tiffany, and she says, "Don't you use my government name. You call me New York." Some respect, please, Paul. The second villain up is Kate, for the ridiculous spying reason. Kate rightly points out that she was not spying. They're in a house with cameras and no doors. She was not spying, she was just walking by. Kate brings up Jojo Siwa again, and at this point I'm hoping that Jojo Siwa is getting some kind of royalties from being invoked by these people. Joel wonders whether they can get Jojo Siwa next year, but unfortunately her villainy has yet to be untapped. I did see her on the most recent version of Celebrity Big Brother UK, and she seemed happy as a goddamn clam. So, no. The third and final person on the hit list is Plain Jane, which apparently was a difficult decision for them to come to, and they're still struggling with it. Say it with a bit more conviction, Johnny. My ears do not believe you. So not only did Paul not put up his target, being Tom, but he put up one of his friends and allies in the house instead. I can't. Seriously. Plain Jane tells us that she should have known better than to trust a low-budget Drake impersonator. She says, "Your upper body is way bigger than your legs. You've been skipping leap day, and you look like a refrigerator on stilts." And I so wish in this moment that she had also compared him to SpongeBob, because that's the only image that I had in my head. She addresses Paul and says she's surprised because she thought they were friends. Paul starts losing his shit and basically says that he had no choice. Wah, wah, wah. Plain Jane gets all up in Paul's grill and says his heavy metal aesthetic is a disguise to the fact that he's just a little bitch. Well said. Joel tells us that tomorrow New York, Kate, and Plain Jane will compete to get removed from the hit list. And that's where we leave it, folks. Catch you on the next episode. See ya! Wouldn't want to be ya!